Hello and welcome to another episode of the Energy Talk podcast. My name is Olubumi Olajide and thank you so much for joining us again this week. Today we're going to be talking about the Generation 2050 initiative, a program by the Energy Institute which aims to create space for young professionals in the energy sector to call for government and energy leaders to take more decisive action on both universal energy access and also climate change mitigations. Today we're going to be speaking with Sinead Obeng, who is the chair of the Energy Institute Young Professional Council and also the lead of the Generation 2050 initiative. So we're going to be talking a lot about their plans specifically towards COP26, which is going to be in Glasgow this year, and also about their plans for the IP Week, which is later in February, in 2 weeks I believe. The folks at the Energy Institute have been kind enough to invite me to a roundtable, which is going to be on the 23rd of February, which is going to be a free roundtable with a few other fantastic speakers. The theme for the roundtable is 2 degrees within reach, and I think it's a very timely conversation. A link to that is going to be in the show notes of this episode, and also a link to Generation 2050 manifesto that Sinead and I will be talking about throughout this episode. Let's learn more about Sinead and learn more about the Generation 2050 initiative by the Energy Institute.
So my name is Sinead Obeng. As the day job, I'm a regulatory affairs advisor for Gazprom in London. And I'm also chair of the Energy Institute's Young Professionals Network, which is also based in London. So in terms of my personal background, I am an economist by background. And when I graduated, I entered the industry working in upstream oil and gas, in commercial roles, both in the upstream gas side and for an LNG company as well. And then after that, I think after seeing kind of the ever-changing energy landscape from a policy perspective, I then joined Gazprom Marketing and Trading in their regulatory affairs team, overseeing regulatory affairs in gas, power and LNG topics that impact the markets and the spreads, which is really important for us as a trading company. One of my duties with the Energy Institute, I've sat on the board of trustees, and that came about because when I graduated, I started running the London branch, networking events and knowledge sharing, which used to be on a face-to-face basis, but now that's evolved into the virtual world. I've been overseeing the activities of the Energy Institute's Young Professional Board as well.
Thank you for that. So I think you mentioned about running the Energy Institute branch in London. Could you just tell how you got involved with the institution in the first place and what it's all about? Because I think that's a good introduction to what we're talking about today.
Sure. So it started when I was a student at the University of Surrey, and the Energy Institute came to my university to tell us about this energy professional body that is not specific to any type of engineering. It's unique in that it's open to all professions, all spectrums of the energy sector as well. So as an economist with a keen interest in energy, it seemed like a great place to start my graduate career and a great way to network, particularly as the energy industry, as you know, is dominated by older professionals. So it was really nice to have a forum that I can go to outside of work to network, to learn about different parts of the sector that weren't necessarily related to my day-to-day job, looking at things such as power at the time, which I wasn't too involved in, and battery storage as well. So having kind of attended a few events, I decided to join the committee, which I did for 2 years. I joined the London committee, and there I chaired the committee and again doing the same thing, just trying to build on the branch representation in industry, inviting speakers to kind of share their knowledge and provide mentorship as well to the members. And then following on from the success and growth from the London branch, I was appointed to the board of trustees as the Energy Institute's Young Professional Representative, representing the interests of its international members that are based in Nigeria, the Middle East, Caribbean, West Africa, Nigeria to be precise, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, and there are also regional branches in the UK as well, from Scotland to the southeast, and also the Republic of Ireland too.
Sinead, I think a lot of what you're talking about right now, it's a very unconventional path for someone who is an economist by background. So what was your initial interest to the energy sector, and what really drew you to the space, and more importantly, what really kept you in the space and is making you take up all the extra responsibilities, as you mentioned, outside of your regular day job?
Well, my journey into the energy industry is pretty unconventional as well. So, as an economist, typically people go into think tanks or go into banking or finance, and that's mostly dominated amongst my peers and my cohort. But within that process and looking for roles and internships, I was quite exhausted with the psychometric tests. Uh, so I found a role that was in an upstream oil and gas company. It was fascinating, it was commercial, and it didn't require psychometric tests. Luckily, they wanted a few interviews and presentations, and that's how I kind of got into the sector. And after that experience, I have to say first that I actually started off with a placement year, and then having done that placement year as part of my course, I graduated, and building on the relationships that I built during that year, I then found a graduate job with an oil and gas company called Prenco.
And now let's talk about the most recent responsibility that you've taken up, Generation 2050. So there's a lot here, and there's a manifesto that's been released, and I'll put this in the show notes of the episode for people who are curious about it after they've heard you talk about it. So what is Generation 2050, and why are you so passionate about this initiative in particular?
Generation 2050 is incredibly exciting for us. So, Generation 2050 is a project that has been initiated by the Energy Institute, and its core aim is to elevate the voices of young professionals and students that are studying energy related topics, particularly in the lead up to COP26. So the project has initially been kicked off with a mass global survey with over 1,000 young professionals and students around the world in every single aspect of energy, from oil and gas through to nuclear, renewables, energy efficiency, all of it. And what we've done, we pose key questions on the hopes, fears, and aspirations for these young professionals on the future of energy. And what we've done is we've compiled the findings of the survey into a manifesto that you mentioned that was launched, I think a month ago it is now. It's all been flying by. And essentially its core aim is highlighting the fact that by 2050, many of us do hope to be in leader positions, and we're going to inherit the sector that's going to be held accountable for how it's performed in tackling the climate crisis. So it's so important that we actually include the young experts and the young students that do already have the expertise on how to best meet climate targets, and actually give them a seat at the table. So that's essentially the Generation 2050 project. And there's been a plethora of events, editorial content as part of this 2050 program between now and next November, and kind of as we progress to COP26, there's going to be loads more events and discussions going on.
So let's really talk about the background of this. So something mentioned earlier in the interview was that in the energy sector, most of the people in leadership positions, I guess in most other industries as well, tend to be a lot more elderly, and they seem to be in a different generation. And I think the reason why it's so important, particularly in the energy sector, is because of all the conversation around energy transition and climate change, and just the difference in, what's the word, in tone that the two generations used to speak about the issues. So do you feel like that's one of the big motivations behind this fact that there's so many different voices that come up in this particular conversation, and it's very, very different depending on what generation you're coming from, whether you're a millennial or you're a baby boomer, if you want to use the more generic terms?
Yeah, I think that's right, Ollie. I think we can look at it from kind of two different angles. I think the first of those is definitely about providing those fresh ideas from a different cohort of people, and that's why kind of diversity of thought is really important. You know, as much as diversity is promoted everywhere, diversity comes in different forms, and age is one of those. And you know, even if you know, I look at myself as an example, I'm a millennial, and the narrative that I've grown up with on climate change is very different to the narrative that Gen Z has grown up with. You know, when I was growing up, the narrative was kind of about the growing evidence of climate change. The doubters were slowly becoming convinced that for the generation below me, they've grown up having seen that core evidence of climate and the terrifying facts and figures about what that means for energy access, what that means for energy security, and the other SDG goals as well. So I think there's that part that needs to be appreciated. I think on the other hand, we have to recognize that climate change is an intergenerational emergency. So it doesn't just impact one generation. I think it impacts us today, and it's going to impact the generations behind us as well. So when it comes to, I guess, such issues, it only makes sense that the efforts to reach these climate goals are done in a motivated way, and they're also done in a way that facilitates that collaboration between the generations. And I also think it's an exercise in reverse mentoring as well. So, reverse mentoring isn't just about age. Reverse mentoring is also about speaking to people and having perspectives from someone that just is sitting at a different angle to you. And, as you're aware, we can have young professionals that are very much in leadership positions, very quickly in their careers, which is becoming increasingly common with all of the new startups and the exciting technologies that are coming out. But you can also have experts in their fields that have just focused on kind of one key issue and one core aspect of energy. And they may look at something from a very academic perspective, while someone else may be looking at it from more of a human perspective or even a commercial perspective. So I think the point of Generation 2050 is both of those things. Firstly, to allow those different views to come out simply because we've grown up with different narratives. But the other side is also about collaboration and kind of telling our senior thought leaders and our senior political leaders that we have the means to collaborate, and we do have the means to provide evidence-based and knowledge-based solutions and ideas as well.
I just want to elaborate more on this collaboration piece that you mentioned. So the actual initiative brings people together in different sectors in the energy industry. So you have people from oil and gas, from nuclear, and from renewables as well. How important is this? Is really bringing together as much of a diverse group as possible, because it also, the Energy Institute, being an international organization, also has branches in different countries. So you're getting a lot of different nationalities involved in this. So what does this diversity and all this inclusion really bring to the program that's different from other things that have come up in the past?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the reason why this is particularly important to me is at the core of our discussions, we're not trying to villainize any technology. So, and that's the value of bringing in voices from different parts of the sector. I think every single technology and every single part of the energy sector, whether it's oil and gas or renewables or battery storage, has a really crucial role to play, as we try and decarbonize. And I think the energy transition is really about getting the right balance between securing reliable energy supply to keep the lights on, which is so important for developing countries, for the representation we have in Africa and Asia. That's really number one, is keeping the lights on and keeping that energy affordable. But also from a global perspective, we also need to decarbonize the economy. And I like to think of it as trying to achieve climate prosperity. So about trying to use our resources in the best way that still facilitates economic prosperity and wealth. And we can only do that if we talk about all the technologies and all the sectors and really bring them into one room to just have quite a frank discussion for everyone to identify, I guess, kind of the risks and opportunities of different technologies as well. So yeah, I would say that, if I'm to use oil and gas for an example, there is a huge pace of change that's happening. I work in the gas industry, and there's a lot of people harnessing their expertise from the traditional oil and gas industries that are helping to drive forward carbon capture storage and hydrogen deployment, especially blue hydrogen, which is, developing hydrogen using pyrolysis through gas, and also investing into clean energy technologies for upstream fields. And that's just a small part of the sector that's doing fundamental changes. And I think that if these companies aren't adapting, then it's going to be really, really hard to kind of achieve those goals that we want to achieve. And achieving net zero is an incredibly complex challenge. And we really require capable people to be part of it. So, and that means building all of the sectors that we have and all of the knowledge we have, and really bringing it together and thinking of energy as one system, rather than a segregated approach as well.
Sinead, there's something that you mentioned that I just want to go deeper on. So, since this initiative is kind of trying to include a lot of different people, there's something that I've been wondering about personally over the last few months due to other things that I have conversations about, and that is really the role of slow change in the energy transition, because when you have to deal with so many people and so many stakeholders, and people want different things even though your end goal is always the same, really balancing that out and appreciating the fact that progress is being made. Like, for example, a lot of the major oil companies have released net zero plans, and almost all of them target 2050 as the end goal, if you will. But a lot of people come up and say that, okay, this is still not fast enough. There's still more that needs to be done. And the thing is, there's always more that needs to be done. And I feel like sometimes there's not enough appreciation of the actual role of slow change, and not being complacent, but just appreciating the fact that if you want to get things moving, sometimes it has to start slow in order to build up momentum. So just want to get your idea on that, being in charge of this huge initiative as well. How do you see that dynamic between wanting to be ambitious and set really high goals, and to appreciate the fact that sometimes slow change is good for the beginning stages, if you will?
Yeah, I think slow change has a different part to play, to be honest. I think slow change is about seeing the need for economic growth and prosperity in developing countries against kind of our climate targets and climate goals. So if you look at kind of the new coal plants that are coming up internationally, coal is actually a symbol of prosperity in many economies, and it provides cheap access to energy, although it is incredibly polluting. So it's very difficult to strike a balance between economies that need to prioritize energy access and, essentially SDG 7, providing affordable energy access, but also looking at kind of the Western world and the more industrialized world, and also striking that balance. And even if we look to the industrialized world, particularly in Europe, there's been loads of discussions about just transition. So essentially ensuring that the energy transition does not provide unintended economic negative consequences for those communities. So in Germany, they've had this huge program to exit coal, and it's been incredibly ambitious. But a lot of that parliamentary and legislative process has been about ensuring that those coal regions, those regions that are incredibly dependent on those mining industries, are still able to find new skills, to make a living. So I think slow transition is so complex, and there needs to be an appreciation for people and an appreciation for affordable access to energy and their livelihoods first and foremost. So I would say to listeners that should be at the forefront of the mind when we talk about slow transition. Yes, it is an emergency, and yes, we need to be creative as quickly as possible, but there's just such a difficult balance to strike, and that's certainly what I've seen in the discussions that I've been part of as well.
I imagine planning for this happened well before the events of March and how the year really unfolded. So, how have your plans really changed, or has there been any things that have been accelerated or had to be adapted thanks to the pandemic as well, and also the restrictions on travel and all the other things that came with it?
So I won't say as a result of the pandemic, because that has been very challenging. But yes, the restrictions that have come about has actually lended an opportunity for the young professionals networks to work more collaboratively in, I guess, sharing the message of Generation 2050. So when it was initiated, it was on the basis that COP26 was still going to be going ahead November this year. And I think the expectation is that it'd be a little program, probably with some editorial content, probably with one or two face-to-face events. But now that we have, firstly, more time, and secondly, only an online platform, that's only lended additional benefits for the program. And I think now that COP26 has been pushed back, I think governments are preparing more in the lead up to COP26. And I think that the intelligence and discussions that need to be had next November are improving. And I think that's really great for our program, because we can get involved in that. We can say, okay, let's say you want to talk more about the global south. Well, we as the young professional networks internationally have access to young professionals that are working and living in the global south and are experts on energy, which is one of the many areas and sectors that need to transform in order to meet net zero targets. So yeah, I can candidly say it's presented a massive opportunity, a massive growth for us. Absolutely.
That's actually really great to hear. So something else was how people can get involved in the program. So if you want to just run through that, how they can get involved or how they can contact or get more information specifically.
Sure. So I would say first and foremost, follow us on the socials, follow the Energy Institute on Twitter, LinkedIn. They also have an Instagram page as well. You can follow myself, Sinead Obeng, on Twitter or on LinkedIn too, where I'm sharing all of the Generation 2050 program. And also, I guess outside of us directly, if you have an idea or you want to engage on social media, share your idea and you can use the hashtag Generation 2050 and we'll pick that up. You know, there's so much going on in the news in a broad spectrum of topics. And I think just simply sharing an idea and an opinion, again, is the power of social media that we can take advantage of, particularly, you know, during the current situation. So I'd say I'll definitely recommend people to do that and just discuss. The last thing I would say is within your respective countries of wherever you are, there are loads of call for evidence papers or requests for papers that are going out by different ministries and governments and energy bodies simply asking for views on subject matters. And a lot of those are surrounding energy in the lead up to COP26. So I would say do look out for those, look out for the opportunities to put forward your ideas and your expertise, because, you know, only we can control the narrative if we offer our expertise and our views. And if we don't take those opportunities to offer it, then we can't really say that, you know, we're future leaders, but we're not being included in the conversation. So it works both ways. I think we have a duty as young professionals to showcase our knowledge and our ideas, as well as collaborating with the current leaders, the current industry leaders and political leaders. And they also have a duty to allow us the space and time to share this and an opportunity to be thought leaders as well.
That's very well said. You mentioned that there's a podcast series that you're going to be releasing soon. So do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, that's right. So the Energy Institute already has a podcast called Energy and Conversation, and it's about the different ways in which we tackle the current energy issues, ranging from climate change to energy poverty. So the second series is going to be launched next year, and it's going to have a Generation 2050 takeover. So the guests will be young experts as well, and they're going to cover topics like the future of the energy grid, also things like building a career with a conscience. And again, it's just an opportunity for our cohort of members to just provide their views and their expertise. So that should be really cool. And again, follow our socials to keep an eye on when that's published. I would just summarize by saying that the Generation 2050 has a place in really inviting everyone that's listening, whether you're incredibly early in your careers, whether you've just started university, to really be engaged with the discussions that are ongoing. I think net zero and kind of reducing carbon emissions is an incredible challenge for all industries, and it's a huge industrial challenge as well. And the way in which we go about that internationally is going to vary significantly in each continent and also in each sector as well. So I think given that level of sensitivity, it's crucial that we do step forward, that we share our ideas and that we do engage, because I think we also have a duty to make sure that we even support leaders that are taking a very science-based technical approach to these challenges. Because to date, you know, it could be argued that such climate issues haven't really been, I guess, gone about in a way that's led by science and expert led, and sometimes it's appeared to be kind of led by profits and you know, other methods that key interested stakeholders might make decisions on. So I think now we're seeing that the priorities are changing and that the moral duty remains. But at the same time, I think that we need to work together to ensure that the economic values and I guess the economic benefits do come along with that as well. And then that's when you bring in things like energy poverty and the SDGs as well, which need to be well balanced. So with that, I hope that your listeners are keen to get engaged with the project, and I look forward to connecting with you and anyone else that's interested in the future.